Greetings and welcome to the Underworld with Christina, a show that descends, transforms, and rises again. The Underworld with Christina is a guided journey into the chthonic realms, a space where ancient stories, forgotten deities, and deep archetypes come alive. Each episode focuses on a different underworld or chthonic figure, force, or concept, exploring their mythology, symbolism, and presence in modern spiritual practice. After exploring the entity or theme, the show shifts into practice. Depending on the episode, viewers may experience spell work inspired by the deity or concept, ritual designed to help connect with the underworld current, guided journeys that invite personal insight, shadow work, or transformation. The show frames the underworld not as a place of fear, but as a source of wisdom, rebirth, and magic. It's a space for seekers, witches, myth lovers, anyone drawn to the deeper layers of the spiritual world. I am Christina Wilkie Burbach, a spiritual transpersonal psychologist, high priestess, ordained minister, anthropologist, death witch, death doula, death walker, psychopomp, psychic, modern mystic, occultist, cemeterian, and I work full time in the death care industry. My specialty is obviously working with the dead, and I am also the author of the book Gardens for Ghosts: The Art, Ritual, and Magic of Planting for the Dead. So tonight we're going to pick up what we kind of been talking about the past couple episodes and kind of bring this little mini series to a close. We're going to talk tonight about modern corpse magic and bone magic, kind of part two. This is the third episode, so we have talked about the history of corpse magic, and then last episode kind of focused on the legal and ethical considerations and personal considerations when doing bone magic and corpse magic and skull magic. And now tonight, I want to get into some actual modern corpse magic and some spell work. So we're going to kick it right off with a home protection skull. So skulls, whether real or fake or synthetic, are often a warning symbol. Like we see it on a poison bottle, little crossbones and skull. So they often are a warning. So we can kind of tap into the energy and the archetype of a skull and crossbones or a skull being a warning by doing a home protection skull, utilizing a skull. So if you're not comfortable, and I definitely want to end the episode by talking about doing corpse magic without a corpse. So you can use any type of skull for this spell work. Maybe you're not necessarily comfortable using an animal skull, a legally obtained human skull. Like, please review the last episode. Or you can use a synthetic skull, like stock up on all your stuff. Halloween is coming up. I know some places already have Halloween decorations out, so you can definitely use a fake skull for this. So you'll need a skull of any kind, flowers, a tray, crystals, a spare key to your residence, a small paintbrush, a small container of water, preferably moon water. Hopefully, you gathered some moon water a couple days ago under the full moon. If not, you can definitely collect, moon water next full moon or the new moon or any moon phase that really resonates with you. And then definitely some sort of offering like wine, dark alcohol, sweets, chocolate, coffee, honey, etc. Whatever calls out to you, whatever is appropriate for your tradition. So this is very appropriate to do on the dark moon. So it's the day before the new moon is the dark moon. So gather all your materials during the dark moon. Place the skull on a tray. So you probably want the tray to be kind of decorative, and then surround it with flowers, plants, and stones. And it's definitely up to you. If, like, for protection, I really like darker colored flowers and darker colored crystals and stones. But once again, whatever resonates with you, whatever calls out to you, and then dip the paintbrush in the moon water or in your blessed water. And then with the water, trace the names or initials of everyone who lives in your house, in your residence, in your apartment, in your condo. And don't forget your animals, your familiars, your dogs, your cats, and other pets you may have. The water will evaporate, but the identity of each individual will have been communicated to the skull. And then now place your spare key under the skull for safekeeping. And this act symbolizes that you trust the skull to watch over your home. And then place the skull and offerings in a special place in your house. on a death altar, which we'll talk about in a little bit, by the front door. I think it's really important that it stays in your house and it's not visible to other people, that to visitors or people that are coming to your house. So then definitely like any sort of ritual, magic, spell work, altars, keep the area clean and replenish your offerings regularly to show continued respect to the spirit of the skull in exchange for protecting your home. So I really like that little spell as a home protection spell. Once again, tapping into the energy of the skull and crossbones or skull as a warning sign. There are lots of other uses of bones, skulls, feathers, teeth, hair. You can create an altar of the dead or an ancestral altar. And I definitely recommend that wherever these are located, that they're towards the west. The west is the direction the water west is the direction of the ancestors. So I would definitely encourage you, if you're going to do a altar of the dead, that it's facing the west direction. So, an altar of the dead can be a beautiful act of remembrance, but including bones requires extra care, both ethical and legal. Once again, if you didn't see the last episode, please go back and review it. You can absolutely do this very respectfully, but you need to follow a few clear pathways and avoid. We always want to avoid exploitation with skulls. And I think I ended the last episode by really having people ask themselves, by using bones and skulls and teeth and body fluids and doing corpse magic and this type of work. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to be edgy, to be, to be cool? Why are you doing this work? And then we never, never, never want to exploit the dead. Like the energy of the dead is very, very powerful, and we never want to disrespect them. We never want to desecrate them. We always want to do this with the utmost respect. So definitely make sure you are ethically and morally and legally obtaining bones appropriately and utilizing them in a very respectful way. So, your core takeaway as we get ready to talk about building an altar of the dead is that you can ethically include bones on an altar only if they're legally obtained, culturally appropriate, and treated with genuine reverence. The safest sources are animal bones if you that you've personally collected, ethically sourced specimens, or symbolic substitutions like plastic or like candles or statues. Ethically, ethically, bones that you ethically have gathered. Like, don't shoot or kill animals, like, gathering their remains in the woods after they've passed away, I think is a really respectful way to utilize bones, but don't ever harm a person or an animal for access to their bones. So, an altar of the dead, whether inspired by Dia de los Muertos, ancestor veneration, or personal spiritual practice, serves three purposes: remembrance, honoring our loved ones, which can include animals or our ancestors; connection, creating a space where memory and presence feel tangible; and then also a space for offerings, giving food, light, scents, or objects that symbolize care. And bones can definitely be a part of an altar for the dead, but they must be handled with care and intention and respect. So, your ethical and legal considerations for bones, just kind of reviewing this. In the United States, human bones are heavily regulated. You cannot possess human bones unless they come from a licensed medical or educational supplier, a legally documented donation, and then even in those circumstances, human bones for spiritual purposes can be culturally insensitive unless they belong to your own ancestors or were given to you with consent. And like we talked about in the last episode, asking the spirit of the bones of the skull if you may work with it, and then, making sure you get a yes answer. So the bottom line is to avoid human bones unless they're from your own lineage and or legally obtained. Animal bones are often more ethical and accessible options, like bones you find naturally in the forests and the fields and the beaches. Roadkill bones. Oh my gosh, I've seen so much roadkill lately and so many hurt animals, especially here. I live in the Midwest in Wisconsin, and there's just deer everywhere. So I'm very drawn to repurposing. I follow this amazing artist. Her name is Amanda. I forget her last name in the moment, but she gathers roadkill from the highways and other places. She finds them, she moves them off the road, and she very ritualistically puts them in a nice position, puts flowers around them, blesses them, does a little ritual because their lives mattered. And people are definitely speeding, not paying attention, hitting animals. We recently had a flock of geese that someone intentionally, they were crossing the street here where I live, and someone intentionally ran them all over. So people are fucking pieces of shit. So, but I think like blessing the roadkill, and hopefully it wasn't you who killed it, less than the roadkill that you find, and then naturally, legally and naturally cleaning them and making sure they're not a protected species, and then utilizing them in ritual and in magic. I think that is a very respectful way. Just roadkill hit by a car sitting there on the side of the road like their life didn't matter. I think using it magically and ritually is a way to kind of give them a sense of respect in a different sort of way. Ethically source bones from hunters are another way to get bones from animals ethically, or reputable biological supply companies. So avoid bones from endangered species, bones sold without provenance, and bones from exploitive markets like mystery skulls online. So, how to prepare the bones respectfully. Once you have ethically sourced the bones, preparation matters. Remove any debris manually, soak in warm water with a bit of dish soap, and then you can degrease with hydrogen peroxide. Never bleach, it damages the bone. And there are people online that you can find other videos and information of people who ethically, collect bones and cleanse them. And then, sanctifying. So you want to cleanse, and then you want to sanctify them, like cleanse and charge them. And that can be spiritual or symbolic. You can do a smoke cleansing with like incense, sage, cedar, Palo Santo, whatever is culturally appropriate, mugwort. You can charge them or cleanse them under the moon. Spoken intention or prayer, Reiki, wrapping them in cloth until placed on the altar. Like there's a lot of different ways to spiritually cleanse the bones. And then building the altar itself. Like I said, I encourage you to have it face the west. You're going to create different layers on your altar. So you have a base layer, which really symbolizes memory. So names and photos and written stories and objects that belong to the deceased, whether an animal, a pet, or a human ancestor. That's your base layer. And then offerings, which once again, it can be marigolds, flowers, food or drink they love, little shot glasses, candy, food, water is always a great offering because it symbolizes passage. Spirits love water. And then after you place the offerings on the altar, then you can place the bones on the altar, and you can use them symbolically rather than as a centerpiece. So once again, animal bones can represent continuation of life. A single bone can represent mortality. A small collection arranged respectfully, not as decoration. And just try to avoid scattering the bones loosely, using bones as aesthetic props, which I talked about in the last episode. Like don't fetishize death. Don't romanticize death. If you're doing this work, then you're doing it for all the wrong reasons. And then definitely don't mix bones with trash or disposable items. And then some ethical alternatives to real bones on your altar for the dead. You can do carved wooden bones. You can do ceramic or clay replicas. You can do stone-shaped like bones, drawn or painted bone imagery, paper cutouts. You can do 3D printing. Like I said, Halloween is a great time to go and stock up on all your bones and skulls and that sort of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of ethical alternatives to real bones. And then, something else to consider is that many traditions believe bones are not symbolic of death, but are symbols of what remains after someone dies. Bones represent memory and lineage and continuity. So using bones ethically means treating them as witnesses, not decorations. So if you build your altar around that idea, everything else that you place there will be much more intentional. You can also utilize bones as ritual tools, athames, ritual blades, wands, chalices. Our ancestors used bones for musical instruments like drums and flutes and pipes. If you follow more of an earth-based or shamanic tradition, a lot of fetishes, which are, and I know I just talked about fetishizing death, and now I'm going to talk about a fetish, but a different type of a fetish. A fetish is like a physical object, largely used in ritual. It's consecrated in ritual, and it's largely from like more of a shamanic tradition. And the fetish, not a perverse behavior, but this fetish in the shamanic tradition is a physical object, and it's believed to hold supernatural power because it has the energy of of who the bone belonged to. So it acts as a vessel or a conduit, anchoring the energy of spirits, ancestors, deities, or natural forces. And the object is revered as it's believed to house an inhabited spirit. So, like some examples of fetishes could be bones and skulls and claws and teeth and feathers, fur, hair, crystals, plants, keys, masks, figurines. So, fetishes don't just have to be body parts or bones, and they can be used in rituals. I mean, you can put your fetishes on your altar for the dead, or you can use your fetishes and rituals to connect with the dead for like mediumship or seances or spirit communication to get insight and wisdom and protection from spiritual harm. You can also use them for ritual adornments. Like I'm wearing a necklace made of coyote tail bones. So, and I only wear this when I do spiritual work. Utilizing bone jewelry as ritual adornments during ritual, during Sabbaths as Sabbats. You can use them as crowns and headpieces and necklaces and rings and bracelets. I also have a really cool bone bracelet I got in New Orleans last year. Speaking of New Orleans, come see me at Hex Fest next weekend. I'll be teaching a couple classes down there. And then once again, bones can always be used as protection. We talked about in the beginning of the episode making a skull for home protection, but you can also put bones in the four corners of your home or your property, kind of like you would do a railroad spike. You can put the bones in doors and windows for protection, and that's your intent. You're using the bones for protection. You can also use the bones in necromancy or for spirit communication. The use of bones is very helpful for necromancy as they help build a bridge from the earthly plane, thus facilitating your communication with ancestors or spirit animals. My Some of my favorite uses of bones and teeth and hair are memento mori for mourning and grieving. And I feel like I want to do a whole episode on memento mori. It was very big during the Victorian era. Often people did not have pictures or a lot of remembrances of their loved ones. So they would create jewelry. And this was not odd, weird, or strange. Like this was the norm during the Victorian era. They would create brooches and jewelry of teeth and hair. So memento mori literally means actually the whole saying, most people forget the whole saying. It's memento vivere quia memento mori. Remember to live because remember you die. So memento mori is symbolized in art through depictions of death and time that show the fragility of life. And these symbols often include skulls, hourglasses, fading candles, clocks, and flowers plucked from the stem. So you can create memento mori with bones and teeth and hair. Like I said, I want to do a whole episode on this to give people a bit more background and information about memento mori. But creating like jewelry as a remembrance, not only that your loved one is gone, has passed away, but that you too are mortal and your time will come. So, skull imagery was very big during the Victorian era, even back further, like 14, 15, 1600s. A lot of gravestones had skull and crossbone and memento mori literally written on them. Kind of getting into now, this may be squeamish for some people. You're much It's much easier because once again, I work in a cemetery. It's much easier for a lot of people to access cremains, so cremated remains, than it is to get bones. So one way to do some modern corpse magic is the use of cremains. So I think they're very, very, very concentrated energy, like essential oils are to a plant. So fire is also transformational. And cremation rates is increasing and expected to continue to increase. In 2023, 60% of Americans chose cremation. And one of the cemeteries I work at two, one of the cemeteries I work at, the majority is cremation. So you can use the cremains of your loved one once again with their permission. And how do you get permission from someone who's passed away? Like close your eyes and connect with them. Use your tarot cards. May I use your cremains in magic and ritual? And for ancestor veneration. So you can put the cremains, into little bottles or vials. You can put them in acrylic as lockets and jewelry and amulets, kind of making your own memento mori in a different way. But my absolute favorite way to use cremains with respect, and you can do this once again with your pets that have passed away, with your loved ones, is to make a mourning jar, like mourning, like crying, like grieving. So a morning spell jar is a ritual container filled with symbolic items to support you through grief, offering comfort, emotional release, and a sense of being held. It works by combining your intention, herbs, crystals, and a sealing ritual to focus and amplify your healing energy. So you can put hair of your loved one or fur, the cremains, graveyard dirt, even better if the graveyard dirt is from their actual grave, your tears, photo of your loved one, their jewelry or small trinkets in a small jar, and then utilizing a purple or white candle and healing herbs like lavender, rose petals, chamomile. You can read my book, Gardens for Ghosts, to see all the different symbolism of different plants and flowers and herbs and how they relate to death and dying and grief and reverence. So, a little shout out for my book there. Buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever books are sold. Supportive crystals like amethyst, rose quartz, a petition paper, like a parchment paper in which you write your intention for comfort and healing, like allow myself to grieve while inviting love, peace into my heart. And then cleanse the jar before you even put anything in it, like wash it. And then as you're cleaning it, visualize heaviness lifting away, and then write your intention down on the piece of paper, state your healing goal, fold it towards yourself, and then place it at the bottom of the jar, and then add the herbs. And with each pinch, visualize yourself being held with tenderness and patience. And then add crystals, picturing their energy wrapping around your heart like a protective blanket. Then seal the jar. So you have that white or purple candle lit or both candles lit, and then pour that wax, very careful not to burn yourself, around the jar to seal it. And imagine that gentle light, comfort, love are surrounding you, and you're being watched over. And then you can place in your space, keep it on your altar, your bedside table, your altar for the dead, a quiet spot where you can reflect and process your emotions. And then leave it on your altar during your mourning period to honor their memory and keep them close to the heart. I'm gonna go for 10 more minutes just because we started a little late tonight. You can also use cremains in as a spell work ingredient, for protection, for ancestor work, for spirit communication, for necromancy. You can use cremains as an ingredient in black salt. Once again, you would combine salt, preferably sea salt or Himalayan salt, black pepper, ashes from like incense, the actual cremains, and then activated charcoal. So that is some ingredients to use for black salt. Once again, if those are your ancestors' cremains that you're using, absolutely black salt for protection. For another spell work for protection magic, you can make sacred ashes powder and then use cremains as one of the ash ingredients. So cremains, silver talc, white parchment paper, cinnamon, sandalwood, African violet. And then you burn the white parchment paper in a bowl, crush the ashes, add the herbs, add the cremains, mix well, store in an airtight container, and use it to anoint yourself and others before a funeral, especially if you're a funeral celebrant. Use it at Samhain or on Ash Wednesday. You can also include cremains and Samhain rituals to honor the dead. Sprinkle some around the perimeter of your magical circle to include the spirits of your ancestors in your ritual. You can dress, like I said, this is not for everyone. Obviously, this is corpse magic, different levels of it. So you can use cremains to dress a candle. So in candle magic, you can carve a name, a sigil, a word, or a rune into a candle. You can rub oil all over it, especially into the grooves of the symbols, and then take the cremains and rub it all over the candle, making sure it's nice and thick over the symbols. You can make ancestor oil for ancestor veneration, 1 part dried mudwort, 1 part dried yarrow flowers, 1 part dried rosemary, 1 part cremains, 1 part graveyard dirt, a base vegetable oil, obsidian or amethyst chips, and then place it in an amber bottle. You can make incense with cremains with herbs and burn it on charcoal. You can burn it in a cauldron. You can roll incense cones with cremains. And then just some ideas for potions. You can mix all different sorts of herbs with cremains to make potions. And once again, they're not for internal use. They're for ritual use. Washing your ritual tools, use it to, create a circle, to cleanse yourself, for hedge crossing, spirit communication, mediumship. There's all different sorts of herbs that are associated with spirit communication, death, funeral rites, and ancestral veneration that you can use, like apples and basil. Once again, you can read all the different meanings for all these herbs in my book. Basil, bay, beets, carnation, chamomile, chive, cilantro, cinnamon, damiana, dill, dittany cree, dragon's blood, fennel, frankincense, heather, holly, lavender, lemon balm, lily, marigold, mint, mugwort, mulberry, mullein, myrrh, and no, mullein is not a substitute for graveyard dirt. I can't believe even people say that. Hell no. Oregano, parsley, patchouli, rose, rosemary, sage, St. John's wort, sandalwood, savory, and thyme. All have different meanings in death and dying and grieving and healing. So you can definitely read more about that. You can check it out in my book. You can use cremains to make an ancestor candle as an ingredient. You can use hair as a wick. You can place it on your shrine, altar, table, and use it anytime that you want to honor, welcome, or work with your ancestors. You can make magical inks for use in necromancy and folklore. You can use magical inks to write spells, sigils, and symbols. You can make the magical inks with beet, dragon's blood, blackberry, pokeweed, elderberry. Those are all herbs that kind of create a dye. You can sew cremains, hair, and graveyard dirt into poppets. Poppets are one method of creating a tag lock to communicate into with a specific soul. You can pour into ritual baths and death work. Ritual baths can help you prepare for divination or hedge crossing, including herbs, essential oils, and cremains. And then once again, you can sprinkle herbs on your cremains in your four corners or around your house in a circle around your perimeter for protection from entities, unwanted spirits, and negative energy. I could go on and on and on talking about different ways to use cremains and bones and skulls. Something that I just want, as I start to wrap up here, something I really want you to think about. So I know graveyard magic and graveyard dirt is a big deal for a lot of death witches and for a lot of death workers. So I have thought, about where I want to be placed when I pass away to let people utilize my graveyard dirt. So what kind of magic? So think about this. I'm real big with pre-planning your death, and I kind of that's part of what I do at my job is help people pre-plan their death. Where do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremains? Do you want to be a casket? So what kind of magic do you want to release? What kind of magic do you want your corpse to release upon your own death? Each final resting place has a different kind of energy and a different level of access to you and the power of your own corpse. So think about it and choose your final resting place with intent. Put it in your will and pre-plan your death, especially if you're a witch. And I'll do another episode on this, especially if you're a witch or a warlock or a magical practitioner, or if you're from like LGBTQIA communities. You definitely want to pre-plan your death and have a will so no one can give you a Christian burial or bury you or cremate you if you don't want to be cremated. You want to make sure your final wishes are respected. So some final resting places just to think about are a crypt, either above ground crypt in a mausoleum, a niche, which is a small little permanent above ground space for urns and cremains. Do you want to be in your own private mausoleum, like a little private estate? Do you want to be in a community columbarium? Do you want to be a traditional ground burial in a casket? Do you want to be like they make cremation benches, like benches that your cremains can go in either the legs or like the base of the bench is like your own little private niche. So that is an option. Do you want to be in a scatter garden? Do you want to be in an ossuary, which is a repository for our human skeletal remains? And that can take many forms. And often it's more community. It's a burial space for a lot of different cremains. Do you want to be a green burial? Do you want to be a mushroom suit? Do you want to have a mushroom casket? Do you want to be scattered in nature, in water, in your backyard? Do you want your loved one to keep your cremains at home? Do you want to donate your body to science? Do you want to become body compost, where you can then become, soil in someone's garden? Do you want to be a tree pod burial? Do you want to be a biodegradable urn? Do you want to be a water cremation? Do you want to be a sea burial? So you can be legally buried 3 nautical miles from shore. Do you want to be a Tibetan sky burial? They're not permitted in the US. So this is where your deceased corpse, your dead body is laid out, and the elements like vultures and animals consume you, and you become, part of the universe again. Do you want to be a gemstone? So your body can actually be pressed, your cremains can be pressed into a gemstone. So those are a number of different final resting spaces. So think about it. Please pre-plan your funeral at both a cemetery and a funeral home, and then do a will, and definitely think about what kind of energy you want your corpse to release when you pass away. And then I just want to end by how to do modern corpse magic without a corpse. So to me, the number one way, and I see this is all over social media right now, Vivianite. So I have a ton of Vivianite. So it's the corpse crystal. A lot of people are like, "Oh, these grow on corpses." Well, not every corpse. The corpse has to have a very specific environment in order to grow these crystals, and they'll often grow like in between their teeth. See them on the bones. So Vivianite can grow in lots of different places. So, but sometimes it grows on human bones if it has iron and water and the human body, like all that combines together to make Vivianite. So Vivianite is a great way, the corpse crystal, to do modern corpse magic without a corpse. Crystal skulls, I have a whole bunch of them. I love little crystal skulls. So these are tiny ones. You can use crystal skulls. You can use skull and bone candles. There's a I think they're called Gravedigger, a candle company that actually uses molds from bones to make candles. So I got some cool like spine candles and stuff downstairs. So you can use skull and bone candles. You can use dollies and puppets and effigies, like even Barbies and figurines, to do modern corpse magic. You can use fake bones or 3D printed bones to do symbiotic magic. You can utilize graveyard dirt. Or my favorite is crypt flies or coffin flies. So they are very much like little fruit flies. And I have a whole bunch of them. If you want some, let me know. Because obviously I work in a cemetery. So their nickname coffin flies is because they favor decaying moist organic material as both a source of food and as a place to lay their eggs. So they're found near corpses and are sometimes used by forensic communities to estimate a person's time of death and when a burial occurred. So if you ever watch the TV show Bones, they talk about bug activity a lot. So you can use corpse flies. I actually, at my office at work, have some carnivorous plants to eat the corpse flies. So I think it's pretty metal that I have plants that eat bugs that eat people. You can also use carrion beetles because they also devour corpses. So utilizing the bugs. You can use flowers, plants, and herbs and grass that grow on graves as substitute in modern corpse magic. You can place an object on a burial site and leave it there to charge under a new moon or dark moon. You can use rain or dew from a crypt or a mausoleum or that puddles around a grave. You can use funeral flowers or a casket spray that was placed on the casket or around the urn. And then my final thing here, so this is from the 1500s. It was an embalming potion. So you can utilize essential oils to kind of recreate this. So balsam, salvia, lavender, rosemary, marjoram, thyme, wormwood, myrrh, sandalwood, cinnamon, gentian, strong vinegar boiled with wormwood, aloes, common salt, and alum all mixed together. That was a very rudimentary form of an embalming fluid back in the 1500s. So you can kind of recreate that with essential oils for your corpse magic purposes. So thank you so much for being with me during these past 3 episodes as we talked about the history of corpse magic, how to legally utilize and obtain bones, and then tonight how to do some magic and spell work with bones and cremains and then substitutes for modern corpse magic. I'm Christina Wilkie Burbach. You can find me all over the web. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you later. Bye bye.